Greetings, good day or good morning. Sorry, computer is dying again. All right. Whew. It's a little bit early for me, but we will have our tournaments very soon. Hi, Sijal. Welcome to you. All right, let's see. First of all, see if we've got the right mic. All right, that looks okay. Now I need to quickly create our tournaments for today, so let's do it. Be a 3-hour-long event. Time control 15 plus 5. Today, starting at 9. Let's get that first one in. Okay, the first tournament's right. Let's create a new one. Second tournament. Okay, and finally, the last one. I should actually look if we can make tournaments that are not limited to the dojo. I wonder if A, that's possible, and then B, if it's desirable or not. I mean, just because we can wouldn't mean we would have to do it, but it would be something interesting to try. Hey, Cross Online, Oscar and Sinesia. Let's see if we've got correct links here. 6645, 6647, 6653. That looks right. That looks about right. All right. Now, one other thing here today is that there is a game here. Let's see. See if we can pull up this game here. Yeah, we can. Classical game. Looks like an advantage to white. This rook's undefended, so it makes it harder for black to do this. If white played a move like king h1, for example, this pawn needs defense. So, okay. Hey, Richie. Thank you. I am generally okay. Hi, Mukund as well. Right now I'm still waking up, you know. But I'll be okay in a minute or two. I'll be well pretty soon. Pretty soon. All right, so here should be our club. Not showing the current events or the upcoming events, huh? $5 CPL? What's $5 CPL? $0.05 a pawn loss. You mean you woke up and you just played a blitz game that was amazingly good? Is that the idea? Gotcha. Okay, so if I open up the 1700 plus arena with the direct link, I do see it. But then it closes Icy's game. And then since then you played Blunderfests again. Okay. Interesting. Well, folks, we are gathered here today to either play or watch some rapid games by dojoers. And those will be starting in about 12 minutes. Howdy, Aaron. Welcome. Good to see you. Do I think B takes C6? Berlin defense is still playable. I don't really know, Arsenal fan. The question refers to a line that has not been seen in a while. Let's just go to make moves. I think this position here, black used to take with the B pawn, not the D pawn before Kramnik's time, basically. Then I don't even know for sure, but I think maybe the knight went over here. Hey, Ifemu UI. No, this is for folks to play each other again. So here are the links with exclam play. Let's see if I can send the links over to folks on YouTube as well. Jay, let me know if these links come through. There's 3 different rating groups there. You think Knight B7 was played? Okay, thanks, Arsenal fan. Yeah, so this line here for black, basically unplayed ever since Kramnik's success against Kasparov using d takes c6. So is this still playable? Why does nobody ever play it anymore? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert on such things, but that's the question. And our club page isn't showing the events. There they are. All right. So Janon, did my link come through on YouTube? I don't know if it did or not. Here's another link. Try again. Copy link. Let's check over here. All right, looks like Blazing Dynamo and Slippery Slope were able to find the tournament as well, so it looks like it's working. Oh yeah, and Jay made it in as well. Okay, good. That's a good point from Oscar. Maybe if you're curious, Richie, you should just try it a couple times and see what you think. Nobody ever plays the Rui. Wow. Interesting. All right. 13 to 1700 group has 4 people, although Femaway Bunty, if you can hear me, I'm not sure if you're in the right group here. You might want to be in the under 1300 group. In the World Team Blitz. Good question, Jay. I am supporting nobody in the World Team Blitz. That event is a joke. Femaway Bunty, there are multiple sections, so you might want to find the link to the under 1300 section. The World Blitz and Rapids were invented by a rich person who wanted to be world chess champion. So he created a team event, and the rules say you have to have one player who's not good at chess and then 3 players who can be as good as you want, or something like that. I don't watch, so it might be 5 players or 6 players or 3 players right now. I don't know, but it was something like 4 players, of which one of them has to be bad by rules. I don't know exactly what the rule is on that. And then 3 of them can be anything you want. And then he pays the 3 best players in the world to play on a team with him, and then he calls himself world chess champion afterwards. And that's the point of the event. Sponsors the whole thing. And FIDE just sells him a world champion title. It's ridiculous, you know, that it exists, that people are like that. All right, our game should be starting in 3 or 4 minutes. Bring back the interzonals, says Richie. Sure. You know that here in the dojo, at least Jesse and I would be game. Kosti would probably be happy to watch the interzonals too. He's not as obsessed with them as Jesse and I. He doesn't, you know, he's not spending his time praying for the interzonals. But if they came back, I think Kosti would be happy enough to watch them with us. All right, folks, 3 or 4 minutes to join the tournaments. So here are the links again. It's been so long, Richie, I don't really know why they don't have interzonals now. You know, I can't say. I can't say for sure. Right, it might be more largely about time constraints, having to organize more events and schedule them, and et cetera, right? That's the reason for a fair number of things. The other reason is often just that people haven't gotten around to X, Y, or Z, you know. Like, you start doing things a certain way, and then you don't take the time to question it or do something else. So the interzonals went on for some time, perhaps out of initiative, out of inertia, and then they've been stopped, and maybe they don't restart out of inertia, you know. So the under 1300 arena needs 2 more players. If anyone would like to join them, I'm sure they would appreciate it, so they could have a tournament. Otherwise, that one will be canceled by chess.com. So if anyone under 1300 would like to play even just a single rapid game, click on this link here to the arena number 4286645. And join our 2 friends there. Hey, Femaway Bunty. Okay, that makes sense. If you think you belong in the 13 to 1700 section, go for it. Chess is a pretty good game, Flav. tournament starting in under a minute, by the way, for those in the tournament. One quick note for all of you is that during the tournament, you should silence, mute, or close your streams so that you don't hear the commentary while you are playing. Are shops closed or open on Sundays in Hawaii? They're open, DH Germany. Yeah, shops are open on Sundays in Hawaii. I think today is Father's Day. So, to any dads out there about to play chess, have fun, have a good day. We're going to open up the 13 to 1700 section here. And click on a game. So, this Daniil Dubov playing white is also known as Jay Anand. All right, and the most common move here after e5 is knight to b5, threatening knight to d6 check. Here, Daniil chooses a different square. Hey, Henry Bomba, the under 1300 got canceled 10 seconds ago because they were missing a player, unfortunately. So if you'd like to play, you could join the 13 to 1700 group, but the under 1300 did not hold today, unfortunately. So we only have 2 groups at the moment. I'm editing it so that the second group is now called the under 1700 group. So you can see and feel welcome there, hopefully. And it'll look like this, I think. Okay, so bishop b4 played by black. Getting out there and threatening knight takes e4, and with the idea of playing d5 to liberate the bishop and just overall make a nice position in the center. White played bishop d3, defending the e-pawn, but blocking the queen's influence on d5. So it seems like black could very safely play d5. But Van Voltenhoffen stopped here for 2 minutes and thought about it before playing this important move, and then correctly played this important move. So that's great. Who wants to play 5-hour games? A lot of people, Flav. Me, for example. Are you allowed to kibitz, Richie? Oh yeah, for sure. You can talk about the games in progress here in the chat. Man, Flav knew how to start a battle, walk into a chess dojo room and say that classical chess is dead. All right. Black thinking here about whether to take with knight or queen, or whether to throw in this trade here with check to break up white's pawn structure. Me personally, I value the bishop pair very highly. So I would probably, my instinct would be to take with the knight, not to trade here. But I can understand stopping and thinking about it for a moment for sure. And you could even consider playing like bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and then taking with your queen instead of your knight, attacking the pawn on g2, and then maybe trying this fancy e4 move. Okay, so white castles, so now the queen's attacked. We're going to see if black goes for bishop takes knight and e4, or just a queen retreat. If black goes for a queen retreat, then the last move won't make sense, basically. Like, why play queen d5 if you're just going to retreat, right? In that case, you could have put the knight there. But black does play the consequent move, bishop takes c3, b takes c3. And that does make sense as far as putting the queen here. Now, maybe von Walthofen's plan is e4. A complicated move, which I believe actually fails, surprisingly. But we'll see if Walthofen goes for it, or if they just castle here, or do something else entirely. But my guess is the healthiest move for black here is to castle. We'll see if that comes up. Let's answer a couple points from chat. Richie said that if you take with the knight, you're likely to have some trades on c3 anyway. The difference would be that if you take with the knight, bishop d2, you could trade your knight and keep your bishop. So you don't give white the bishop pair, right? So that's an option for black. And if white takes on c3 with the bishop, again, you finish the trades, you break up their structure, but you have not given white the bishop pair. So that's why I would strongly consider knight d5 versus trading right away and doubling the pawns. I would probably take with the knight, hoping to keep the bishop pair out of my opponent's hands, but still double their pawns in the near future. Now, bishop e6 gets played, a clean developing move. And let's talk for a second about this potential e4 move. If e4, Arsenal Richie fan was correct, that bishop takes e4, a shocking tactic, appears to work for white. It is also possible that rook e1 is just as good. Is it? Maybe. Well, actually, rook e1, bishop e6, bishop e4, queen here, and then, yeah, there's this move, huh? Maybe rook e1 works as well. Here's the straightforward capture move, which is the first one I looked at. If queen takes bishop, there's rook e1, winning the queen. And if queen takes queen, you can take here with an extra pawn. You know. So I think bishop e4 for sure wins the pawn for white pretty simply. I believe rook e1 does as well, as Richie says. Hard to know which one's best, but probably this does a similar job. So e4 was sort of a trap, I think, which black, who is spending time thinking about their moves, avoids with bishop e6. White gains a tempo, doesn't spend a tempo, gains a tempo with c4, kicking the queen, and then, oh, this is why black probably needed to castle previously. At least they're able to get in the move e4 and trade queens off the board. So that bishop on a3 will not immediately end this game. Yeah. It's definitely worrisome. These are weak squares. It's hard to get the rook on h8 into the game ever. But if black trades queens, which I imagine they will, and then plays rook d8, offering a rook trade as well, you know, the amount of material on the board decreases rapidly, and it doesn't look like you're going to get checkmated as black. Ooh, but if you leave queens on the board, then you will. Then you will. Uh-oh. It'd be lovely to see Jay think about some of his moves instead of just banging them all out instantly. And here Jay finally does do that. So Jay now has a choice between trading queens or stepping out of the queen trade or continuing to play, other desirable moves like rook e1 or f3 without either making the trade or denying the trade. As white, I would want queens on the board with this king position. I think, by the way, folks, I can understand and explain this b6 move. Black would have been afraid that after trades, I don't know which rook takes back, trades here, that white would have the move knight c5. And that would be a strong move. Oh, also pressuring e4, right? So I think black feared this, but in my opinion should have allowed it, because trading material is so important here for the health of this king, stuck as it is. So like this, I basically know that I won't get checkmated by playing these trades. Will I maybe lose a pawn? Yeah, I could believe that I'm going to lose a pawn here somehow. But that's probably about as good as things are going to get for me. In fact, no, I couldn't castle here because knight e6 would win in exchange. But I can play this move, and I'll probably only lose one pawn. Hey, RG, go ahead and join the under 1700 group if you want to play today. Current events. I don't know if that link will work for you. If it doesn't, you'll have to go to the Chess Dojo page and then click on current events and find your way there on your own. Okay, so that's why black played b6, was to keep that knight at bay from c5. And Jay goes for c5, emphasizing opening up the position over avoiding the queen trade. But this move here also might allow black to castle. Pawn takes pawn, attacking the rook. Rook e8. Pawn takes pawn, attacking the rook. Rook e8. Black goes for it. How would black eventually lose a pawn in this kind of a position, Gamma 5? For example, one move for white which might win a pawn is bishop to b2. And the idea is that even against b6, you play bishop takes f6, attacking g7, pawn takes, knight e4, and white's up a pawn. That's one pretty plausible line. I actually think against bishop b2, black would probably castle, but it allows the same pawn capture for white. So that's a specific line that I had noticed earlier when looking at this position, but that's actually separate from my instinct. My instinct was telling me that white should be more or less winning a pawn here because black's position is so much, because it's such a problem for black with the rook on h8. Like the contortions that you have to go through in a position like this, even if white just retreated the knight and let you play b6, right? The contortions you're going to have to go through as black to develop the rook, I just have an instinct that white should be able to win a pawn during the time that black is uncontorting themselves. It's a general instinct, and those general instincts are sometimes wrong, right? It's like an evaluation guidepost, right? Sometimes you have a sense like, I should have a checkmating attack, or I should have an attack strong enough that my opponent can escape but has to make a concession. Or I have an attack strong enough that if my opponent plays well, they can actually defend it. But at least my attack is strong enough, it makes them find some hard to find moves. You've got a different sense of how good or bad your position is. I instinctively thought that white should be able to win a pawn before black gets the rook on h8 into the game, because it looks so challenging to do so. And how that manifests, can be different things. It could be the move f3 comes in at some point, opening up some part of the game. You struggle to keep control of squares for this knight. I don't know. There's different ways it could go. Bishop b2 is definitely a possible other area that white can get at you. So that's a specific line as well. A pawn advantage is good enough to be winning, claims Mickelwold. In my own experience, a pawn advantage is only something like a 50% chance to be winning. Wow, Jay goes for a very direct trade here with bishop b5. We're catching back up with the game. You guys see how castling costs black a pawn, right? The bishop couldn't stop castling for a moment, but after pawn takes pawn, the rook's attacked. Black saves the rook. And white is now ahead by a pawn. Goes straight for this trade here, which is curious. Then lands the knight on c5 to protect the pawn. This move could have been played without the bishop trade as well, I think was an option. Black's bishop dodges. And so we've got white up a pawn. And I would say it's not guaranteed that it's winning. It's kind of 50-50. Also, we're talking, a 1400 to 1700 level here, which means that up a pawn is not, practically speaking, the end of the game either. Even if technically white were winning with, Magnus Carlsen play or something like that, you couldn't be certain that white would handle the game. And I would say, a master like myself playing this as white, not at all guaranteed to win. Somewhere around a 40 to 50% chance. Would it be more winning without queens on the board? Depends which pieces are left, Mickelwold. At the moment, I also noticed opposite colored bishops, which favors the defender, saving a lot of endgames. Wow, and Jay goes for a lot of trades, and the extra pawn has been rounded up on b7, so now we would definitely assume that white is not winning, right? The game could be pretty close to equal. It depends largely which piece is better. I would still favor Jay's bishop, so I would guess that white has an advantage here. This is a nice square for the queen. There's two nice squares for this bishop. So it's a pleasant position for white, but the extra pawn is gone. So black's hanging in there for now. Congrats, chessman. Or my condolences if you're upset about it and didn't mean to win. All right, we got a couple more people have joined the group. Good to see that Slippery Slope and Blazing Dynamo were able to get in and play. And they've still got their game going over here. Oh, because they've got a very complicated opening going on. Black has won a pawn on e4 before castling. So white's under some pressure to... Oh, and it was tricky. Queen e4, f3, attacking two pieces. But then black has queen takes bishop check. Yeah, so white has to try and prove that they've got something for the pawn black took. I guess queen takes g7 could win back white's pawn. So that's maybe the meaning behind h3. That looks pretty reasonable for white. Maybe the bishop will retreat, white will take, and black will castle over towards the queen side, since that's still possible. Okay, bishop retreats. Yeah, rook g8 is definitely going to be scary, Carnicero. Makes one wonder how much one wants the pawn back, right? And developing looks pleasant, getting a tempo on the queen, but after the queen drops back to g6, you pretty much know that you're going to be down a pawn for the foreseeable future, right? So that's a big moment for white. Yeah, and maybe wisely they choose to just, you know, leave the decisive moment for later on and play the game down a pawn. Maybe very mature. Let's quickly see how bad was queen takes g7, shall we? Rook g8, queen h6, queen g2. Is this worse than being down a pawn? I guess I would say yes. Say we try some kind of counterattacking move. Still down a pawn. Okay, didn't get checkmated. Yeah, I can definitely understand just choosing knight to d2 and playing on. Seems like a good choice. The other game we've been following, let's see what's happened here. Let's go back a little bit. So we saw it right after black regained their pawn. Queen a6, interesting move. And will black grab the pawn on a2? They will. That puts some pressure on Daniil Dubov. That black has grabbed the pawn. Queen comes around. See, I would have expected queen d5 centralizing, but I think von Waldhofen doesn't want to give the a-pawn. So they cover this g5 threat with the queen. Rook a1, queen comes over here, h3. Now the a-pawn is doomed. I would play h5 for black, trying to crack white's king position, which is a little rickety now. But black tries to improve the knight. White grabs the pawn. Knight swoops in. I'm also very nervous about this checkmate being almost open, and my queen now being so committed to this. Queen e3 to stop knight h3 check. Open file. But there is back rank mate as well. Anything could happen. King tries to get out of the way. Knight e6. And Jay grabs a pawn. Queen c5, hitting the rook. It's defended. C-pawn goes. Oh my gosh, position's very, very close to equal. In this position, maybe queen takes queen, rook check, rook takes would have been basically back rank mated. So I think Van Waldhofen dodged a bullet here. This looks like the cleanest way to equalize the game, right? You trade the queens, you leave only pawns on one side of the board. But after rook check, I don't really see any defense to the back rank. Rook c8, rook takes c8, knight d8, rook takes d8, knight f8, bishop a3. So black leaves those pieces on the board. Queen takes c2, bishop e5, and very nervous about black's back rank, but for the moment, it looks like the game's holding together and very close to equal. Just a little morning stretch. Hey, thinker teacher. In general, things are going very well for me. How about you? There we go. Some back rank mate protection, aka Luft, for Van Waldhofen. So that reduces my anxiety right away. I don't like to see people get just back rank mated randomly. I like an occasional brilliant back rank mate, but I don't like sort of stumbling into it. So h6 with a Luft. Good for me. Yeah, von Walt. Or von Walt. Yeah. Doing all right now. At some point, you're going to want to inch the queen closer to the king, maybe. Lots of options for black now that the king can't be back rank mated. It means you can use your rook. So that adds a lot of options, right? Before we had 2 pieces to use, now we have 3. I'll be right back. Just a second. Well, that feels better. Should have taken a moment to do that an hour ago. All right, h6, king g2, queen c6 check. Avoids the queen trade. Queen trade is pretty safe, my friend, and you only have a minute to play out the game. Oof. That should have really been queen f3, huh? There's no way you want to keep this queen passively on this miserable square. Black is playing for a win, thinker teacher, indeed. You don't have to play the whole thing, 7. That's one of the values of an arena, is you drop in and you play the number of games you want. You know, you play 1 or 2 games, or you play 10 games. Up to you. Hey, Santo Sud. Mickelwold asking, if both sides have a bishop of the color you control, when is it good to trade those bishops and when to keep them on the board? Like, you control that color complex with your pawns already, Mickelwold? And you're wondering if you want to trade your bishop for their bishop that defends the squares that you already have some edge on? By the way, 7, like every time you play a game in one of these arenas, I think it just pauses the tournament for you and it doesn't start another game for you until you click that you're ready and want another game. Oh, it's a student of yours, thinker teacher. Aha. So you want to see him playing for the win in this situation. Well, Dubov tries something. h4. Advancing these pawns further. Black's pretty tied up by the queen, being stuck defending f7. Goes for the active rook. Queen c6 check coming out. If the pass is any indication, white might play queen f3. We'll see. Solid chess, not drawing chess. Yeah, well, trading queens is solid. Okay, now king g3, very, very risky. So now black's got options like rook d1, going to g1, and options like queen d5, threatening rook d3. 2 very scary possibilities from White's perspective. Rook goes to d1, and White's immediately in danger. Plays f3. That's a good move for now. Yeah, that reduces the danger quite a bit. Nice find by Daniil so quickly, 10 seconds. Finding f3 to keep the king defended for now. Val Waldhofen very low on time. The rook and queen connect, so they keep each other defended. And White's pawns keep coming. Now that pawn, Black can probably just capture. HG, HG, knight g5, and if queen g5 at the end, rook g1 wins the queen. We get queen c5. The queen trade that Black avoided for so long, it happens now. Rook takes attacks the bishop, and g-pawn might be hanging here. White plays f4. Black can maybe win a pawn by taking twice on g5 right here. It's worth calculating with your last 20 seconds. I mean, don't use all 20 seconds on it, but, you know, use maybe 3 or 4 of your 20 seconds on it. I guess you get 10 seconds per move, so you can spend 10 seconds looking at knight takes g5 here if you want. Chooses not to go for it. I'm pretty sure it worked. Yeah, I didn't calculate it. I just see it, so to speak. This g5 pawn hanging with the rook g1 check on the queen is something I just see. This one here I had to calculate one line thinker teacher, which is this move. Bishop d4. I don't really have to calculate bishop g7 check knight e4 so much. Maybe I should have calculated it more. But this bishop d4, rook c4, and Black keeps the extra pawn. In theory, the game's a draw whether or not you win a pawn, right? But it's always better to be the person who's up a pawn. Ooh, the rook trade allows the Black king out. This is slightly risky for White. If the Black king comes to f5, then I think White can lose, actually. So we'll see if that king manages to get there. Okay, a draw is agreed. Just when Black did have some chances to maybe win. Like here, for example, you can go knight d5, attacking the bishop, and when it steps away, you can put your king on f5. Once your king's on f5, you can maneuver the knight around to a square like e6 or something, and you start pressuring these pawns. You might be able to win this pawn eventually. There's a small chance of it. So there's a tiny chance here at the very end that Black could find some option to grind this out. But okay, good game to both players, long and hard fought. And now let's go to the 1700 plus group and watch a game of theirs. All right, so games right now. We got Aaron playing. Getting towards the end of the game. Big extra pawn for Black. The knight is going to struggle against this. This position should be winning for Black at this level. Then we've got D takes c6, what looks like a Ruy Lopez. No, there's pawns on e5 and e7. It can't be a Berlin. So it's something else. Maybe a bishop b5 Sicilian or something. That one looks interesting as well. Let's check out the end of this. There's only 20 seconds on it. The dangerous phase. Black advances the b pawn. White improves the knight. Maybe it's going to go to f5 in a moment. Or maybe it'll simply blockade. Black keeps the queen centralized, which makes good sense. That's a good looking move. Knight b3, looking for the blockade. Bishop d6, looking at queen e1 checkmate. White makes more look for the king. Queen c3 is always a consideration. Black goes for it. Maybe king g2, maybe queen c3. That's a hard choice. Or queen d5 if we feel we need to keep pieces on the board. But it's annoying to have to keep this piece defended. Aaron throws the check. Okay, he's going to also throw queen e4 and just mess with black's king position slightly. And then queen d5 will come, hitting the bishop and the pawn. No, knight d4 first, interfering with black's possible defense. Aaron sees queen d5, queen f6. These players are very strong, so even with just, the 10-second increment, they can see all kinds of little details. Brings the knight first to keep black's queen away from the king. Black counterattacks the knight, and white has to watch out on f2 and g3. Knight goes passive. Black comes in, is going to be able to take f2 with check, and that is a major improvement on the position for black. The queen even covers f7 from here, so it's looking really, really terminal. Queens are off the board. There's nothing left to think about. Just move the b pawn forward, black, or don't. Am I doing some Hawaiian things? Well, yes. Everything I'm doing is Hawaiian at the moment since I'm in Hawaii. Baturinka not flexing the b pawn just yet. And here the knight has time to get around and cover this blockade square again. The pawn could have gone all the way to b2 many, many moves ago, which would have put white's knight on a really short leash. It should always be winning eventually, this bishop with 2 extra pawns. Okay, and Aaron gives it to him. King's coming in here, and it will break pretty soon. We'll go check the other game. Oh, black's got an extra bishop while we weren't watching. Did black always have an extra piece? Nope. Ay, ay, ay. We had a howler here from the Bocadillo, leaving the knight hanging. Oops. My FIDE rating is now somewhere in the 2300s, Yasser. I know to be an IM you're supposed to be 2400. I was 2400. Then there was a mix of rating deflation and me having kids and not training seriously, or not playing or training very seriously anymore. Now on king b7, there's rook a7 check, and rook takes e7, which endangers black's whole structure. Maybe here. It looks horrible. Doesn't seem right. This is definitely a move I would stop and think about from black's side, despite the extra bishop. And normally I'm pretty confident with an extra bishop. No. I'm not waiting for any rating bonuses. Not really worrying about ratings either. Just looking forward to another chance to play chess eventually. All right, black goes for it. Cleans up the pawn. But the king side gets hurt. Very hurt. The bishop slips out before getting trapped. Should be realized is that rook f7 would even trap this bishop next move, right? So the bishop comes out. Now does white go rook f6 and try and capture another pawn? I think just pushing the e pawn... Well, actually, you are threatening maybe e7, e8. It has to be looked at. So e6, rook d1. e7, there's rook e1. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Yasser has joined us, Santa said. e6 isn't terrible either. Rook d1, you could then go rook f6. You know, the rook gets behind you and you take. White does push it. Okay. Okay, gives check instead of rook d1. I mean, there's also pressure on black to find the right defensive setup against this pawn. So the idea is to put the king on the e file, check, king e3, and then rook d1 maybe, so you can always come here with check. And, you know, one other interesting option this opens up for white is to play f5 in this kind of a position. With the idea of then pushing the g pawn as well. Yeah, I caught that, Sando said. Or David, should I say. I caught that. Okay, in the game, king e2 gets played. Against rook d2 check, I suppose you can also just go back to f3. Rook here. It's got check, so we can't push e7 yet. I would advocate for king f3, even though I know king e3 is tempting. People like to attack their opponent's pieces. But king e3, rook d1, and you're on the e file, which is inferior. And also, you have to calculate bishop c5. So, king f3. Nice! Black repeats positions. El Bocadillo can go back to f3. Landon, I played my first games when I was about 5 years old. But aren't you in a game right now? You shouldn't be in the chat room while you're in a game. Isn't this your game over here? Go play your game. We can talk when you're not playing a game, okay? Draw agreed. Bocadillo saves the game down a piece with that repetition. So this suggests that that they should perhaps have played an idea found by Oscar earlier on. Yeah, don't worry about your rating, Oscar. You're a good chess player. Oscar saying maybe black should have started with bishop f8 way back here to cover this pawn. Ah, but there was rook a8 check back then, right? Hey, Seven, your opponent claims that they were drunk this morning and lost like 1,000 points or so. So you may lose some online rating points. You'll gain them back later. As Oscar Chess was just figuring out in the Twitch chat. You know, you can lose your online rating points for one reason or other. You can get them back another day. Let the points come and go. Let the points ebb and flow. Don't let the points keep you from playing. So this was actually not easy to win, was it? And this move was maybe not the most precise. An easier move for black at this point would have been king c7, preventing rook b6. As far as technique, that would have made things a lot easier. You defend the c6 pawn, you defend the b6 square, and then you could maybe go rook d5 or rook b8 or rook a8 to try and start cleaning things up. Or you could first go bishop f8, e6, get your bishop into the game, and then start trying to win the pawn. In the game, after rook d5, rook b6 lands, and now if you take on a5, white at least cleans up the c6 pawn, which would be okay, but black goes for this, and now the best move here is very tricky to say. You know, even this move, which I suggested, saving all these pawns, when we're going through this quickly, it allows check, king here, check, king has to defend the rook or you lose, right? Pretty much, king here. Check with a draw. Not only that, if rook a7 isn't right, this move might also be enough to have some chances for white, although after bishop e5, fe5, king b6, that's not as good as the repetition. So, yeah, this was strangely not easy to find the right move after the pawn came to b6 here. Quite challenging. All right, we're going to go to our other group, the lower rated of the two groups, and find a new game to watch over there. Slippery Slope, sure. Let's check it out. We've got 14 players now, wow. And a bunch of games going on. We've even got a bunch of 2,000 players who've entered the wrong section. People can't read, huh? Maybe they're listening while playing, since they're not rule followers. Sir Eushism and Gotham Hustler. There is a section for players over 1,700. So when you get a chance, leave the under 1,700 section and go join the 1,700 plus section, where there's a bunch of other players around your level who you can have really great games with. Okay, so let's see this. Black's got a rook against white's knight. In this position here, did black have the option to come down here? Here. They did. I wonder if black noticed this terrifying move, bishop h6. They did think for a while, and rook e1 is very, very tempting. So if they noticed this move, that would be fantastical awareness from Slippery Slope not to go in for rook e1. If black saw that, that's really impressive. Players at this level rarely look that hard for their opponent's resources, you know? Rarely do they avoid, you know, tempting strong moves. So, all right, so black backs off with the bishop. White develops the knight towards the king side and stops rook e1. Black has a rook against a knight. Plays d5, getting some more development with this tempo on the queen. They'll deal with saving the rook next move, hopefully. Queen moves. And now, you know, something like bishop d7 or rook e6 would be two very viable ways of saving the rook on e8, which is attacked right now. Sometimes when you use a fancy move like d5 attacking your opponent, you forget about your rook on e8, and then you slip up and you don't save it on the next move. You kind of forget about it in all the action. With everything you have to think about. Now, c6 is a safe move as well for protecting the rook. And even b5 could be considered a safe move to protect the rook. What I like about the first two moves I suggested is that they're both moves which are kind of directly improving black's pieces a little bit, you know? They're trying to make forward progress with black's development. Especially the move bishop d7 seems very, very desirable from that perspective. Okay, black plays a move very similar to rook e6. They play rook e4, leaving the bishop open compared to rook e6 maybe. Could still go to g4 in some cases, kind of like rook g6. So, perfectly nice move here from Slippery Slope. And of course, the key was to not leave the rook hanging. Any move that didn't hang that rook was going to be a pretty good sign. It's not exactly by design, thinker teacher. It's just how my chess.com window is displaying. Yeah. If the players had really short names, it would show their ratings. You know, like if this guy was just named Slope, we would see his full 1100 rating. So I do obviously, as you know, think that people shouldn't be obsessed with their ratings, and you know, I try to help them talk. I try to help talk people through that sometimes, but no, I haven't like made an effort to black out the ratings or anything like that. They're there. I rather talk people through not caring about them than blatantly hide them. Although I do, you know, hide the eval bar and all that instead of showing it and then complaining about it. But that's different, you know. Once once you see the eval bar, you can't unsee it. h3, and now a greedy move that I do not love from black's perspective. Maybe from a computer perspective, it's perfectly safe to grab this pawn, and maybe it's the best move. You know, so should I criticize a move that's the best move? Probably not. But okay, and I won't. We could develop the bishop, then our rook's retreat is cut off, and white has time to play c3, defending the pawn and blocking out the bishop on a7. I guess sometimes you just gotta eat a greedy pawn and worry about finishing your development later. So good on you, Slippery Slope, for eating this pawn. Now maybe put the bishop over here to keep g7 covered and the whole kingside better defended. Again, the bishop's fine on this diagonal now that black's won the d4 pawn. So it could go either way. Here I think the computer would probably... Sorry, let's not say computer. Here I think the objective truth would be about equal. You know, that you don't strongly need to go one way or the other. But bishop f6 is the safer move. And since black has the advantage, they should probably play the safer move. Now, the other move that comes into consideration would be probably this bishop sack and pseudo sack, right? Just a little tactic to win a pawn. That looks pretty decent for black, so I think that was a fine move as well, winning a pawn there. So now the rook's going to be forced back. The h3 move, which was a very nice move by von Walt. Stopping rook g4, so the rook's going to have to back off somewhere. It suddenly got very quiet in the house, as if the kids went off to the beach. But it's very hard to organize them that fast. I would be surprised. Are they just being naturally quiet? That would be so weird. All right. Once again, the rook is slippery enough to escape. Black maintains the material advantage. More development. All right, Thinker Teacher asking, are there any other chess revolutions in the near future? Other than the AI impact? I think that... Oh, here they come. Hi. You want this? No. I mean, I do think that it's possible that AI could maybe not replace human chess teachers, but it might be able to provide some useful coaching eventually. When I saw early versions of AI explaining chess moves, it was so bad that I was not very bullish on its potential. And then I saw like AI versions of, you know, writing poems or writing songs, and I wasn't very impressed as well. Something like Decode Chess, yeah, I thought it was just awful, completely unready to be offered to people as a product, you know? Like you could put it up and say, look, this is an interesting thing. This is the level AI is at the moment. But to try and sell people that as a product was laughable to me. But not only was it laughable to me, but my first impression was, I doubt this is ever going to get very good. Now, I'm a little more agnostic, a little more unsure, but I would say there's a substantial chance that that kind of stuff could become really good, or decently good, and that could lead to a revolution in chess education, and it would also change, you know, the chess market dramatically, the economics of the chess world, right? If people have access to some really cheap AI coaching instead of individual coaching, I suppose the first order would be putting a lot of chess teachers out of work. You know, especially those who aren't better than AI. Because there are chess teachers out there of different qualities, right? So there might still be a few teachers who are better than an AI coach, and some people who would... Uh-oh. F6, bishop F6. Well, white is back in the game. So, you know, like maybe a coach like Sam Shankland, who's 2,700 and a very good teacher, you know, maybe he would still have students and they would be, you know, and maybe it would still be expensive to get lessons with him, and only a few people would get such a good teaching experience. Wow, and black just collapses and resigns that game, folks. I mean, white was down in exchange, and all they were doing was winning back their exchange. So black was doing fine there. No need to collapse and resign. Really interesting how when something goes wrong, for some people, it really just destroys you, right? Oh, excuse me. Here, Taylor, that exclam play command only works on Twitch, not YouTube. So there's a link for you. 1 second. Sorry, a dramatic denouement to that game we were watching, but Taylor, you're very much welcome and invited to come play with the others here if you like. Let's go back to this for a second and see how fast this happened. So knight g5, making a threat to h7. Black could maybe defend that threat with a pawn move, but in general, one doesn't prefer making pawn moves, right? When you're ahead, and one does prefer trading. But black had not seen that f6 wouldn't work, right? I think when they took on g5, they planned f6. They thought a while about bishop g5, played their follow-up confidently and quickly, which I approve of, by the way, Slippery Slope. If you ever watch this later, I totally approve of doing your think here, predicting the opponent's response and having your response ready, and not double checking but believing in yourself and playing this. Now what you have to do after this bishop takes f6 is sort of improve the level of the calculation at this point, where you can already see bishop g5, f6. Oh my god, they have bishop takes f6, and then maybe you avoid bishop g5 because of that, right? So you want to, in general, folks, you want to be pushing yourself to get just one step, one half move, 1 degree better at any chess skill, such as calculation, right? So we want to just see what we got wrong, and then see if we can just look that one extra move ahead, or notice that one extra detail in advance. But after this happens, bishop takes f6. This is the unpleasant shock. Here, Slippery Slope stops and thinks for a minute, realizing that they have, so to speak, blundered something, or that something's gone badly for them, that they're losing some of their material. But the rook is stopping checkmate. Bishop takes rook, queen takes bishop, recovers in exchange for white leaving an even position. So if black remained on an even keel here, they could play a move such as queen f8, bishop e7, queen e7, and say, now let's just play a whole new, the next phase of the game, right? The position's about equal. Let's just keep playing from here, right? So, instead there came a panic move and then a quick resignation. Now queen g5 check, and maybe bishop takes rook. I can understand resignation now, maybe. It does seem to be very much falling apart. Although, personally, even here, I would just keep playing, Have white find the moves that force me to resign. But I'm not going to resign until white has put on the board their winning position. So you can see when someone gets surprised by something unpleasant, this kind of very, very quick collapse, right? It's only one move from surprise to resign. And this is something to really watch out for, everybody out there. When you get unpleasant surprises in your game, you're going to... everyone, I think, is going to have an inclination to collapse. You have to actively work on and build up your not collapse response to avoid such a thing. the default is that people collapse. And it's one of the advanced skills as we move back to the 1700 plus group. It's one of the advanced skills that advanced chess players gain over years of playing chess, right? Is that they get better and better at recovering from negative surprises. Here's an interesting position in front of us. I'm going to answer an interesting question from chat, so we're just going to have this running for a little bit. But here, black has a rook and bishop pair against a queen and knight, plus a center pawn. So it's pretty close to equal materially. The position's generally pretty close to equal, probably, would be my guess here. Now, Thinker Teacher and I were discussing whether or not basically AI chess coaching bots would replace human coaches. I think there's a lot of coaching that they could replace. A lot of one-on-one coaching by players who are not super GMs could get replaced, potentially up to my level, like IMs, yeah. I think that there would probably still be some people who would want lessons from me if I were wanting to teach lessons, even in the face of computers, because there are some human things that I add to the lessons that a bot would have an even harder time to talk about, about the player's psychology, because one of the roles of a chess teacher, as you know yourself, is that you kind of play the role of I want to say shrink. What's the real word? Therapist. You're kind of like a chess therapist for your students. So that's something very, very intricate and human, maybe, that remains. But that said, if you had a bunch of really good AI coaching options, which I imagine would destroy on price a one-on-one human lesson, then even if there might be a few people who still want lessons with someone like me, the total number of people looking for that kind of lesson is going to be way down, and there's going to be a ton of unemployed, IMs looking to teach chess lessons. So perhaps the number of people looking for the lessons might be less than the supply. Right now, the demand is much higher than the supply, so somebody like me has to decline to teach lessons all the time. I have to say, no, I'm not available. No, I'm not available. Well, that's the thing, Santos said. I think the bots might eventually be able to teach people why they make moves. If they can never teach that, then of course this will never happen. But I'm thinking now that there's maybe a 70 or 80% chance that they will be able to do that, right? And then that's going to destroy the chess teaching market in a certain sense. I'm not saying that's good or bad, just destroy as an objective term, meaning, destruction. Sometimes it's good when things are destroyed, right? I don't know. A system of slavery and apartheid or something like that. I agree, Rotten Chef. I don't think AI can beat the best teachers, right? But they might be able to beat the bottom 70 or 80 or even 90% of teachers, because there's a lot of chess teachers out there who are either not great at chess or not great at teaching, right? It's hard to be really good at both of those. And basically there's not a sufficient supply of top chess teachers. So people who are not top chess teachers are also employed as chess teachers. Another kind of chess teacher that I think would probably continue would be like the chess in the schools type teaching, right? There you don't really need a bot that explains moves. You just need a nice, friendly role model who's good with kids. Somebody who goes into a classroom and gets a bunch of kids excited about chess. And there it doesn't, you're not even talking about are you 2,000 at chess or 1,800 or 1,200 or 2,600, right? There's a lot of players rated 1,200 who are teaching chess in the schools and inspiring kids in a way that, a brilliant chess AI thing wouldn't be able to do. So I think that's another thing that we would still need would be humans to go in and teach the kids. Yeah. There goes White's center pawn. White's struggling to find good targets for the queen. Grabs one here. The queen, to be really useful, needs just some weak, undefended spots, But White's having a hard time finding weaknesses in Black's camp here. Things to attack. Now Black's got 2 pawns. But the rook needs to be supported, or does it go here? Whoops. That was me. And honestly, those kind of people who are really good with kids, they might be able to leverage the AI stuff to be better teachers without having to be as good a chess player, right? Because there are people who are like 1,200, really good with kids, not that good at chess. In a sense, they're teaching chess really badly, right? Like they might tell the kids, you have to move your knights before your bishops or stuff like that because they don't understand like chess principles with any real subtlety, maybe. But imagine they're great with kids and now they can work with these AI chess engines. They might be able to actually up the level of the instruction they provide. When should I be finished? What works for the family?
Well, not do that. But 8, we're supposed to go to the beach at 8:30. I need help getting the kids ready. I've been trying for 30 minutes to try to make it to the farmer's market to the beach, but I've canceled the farmer's market because I can't do it.
Okay. So we'll get ready in 15 minutes. All right, folks, so you heard it. Perhaps in about 15 minutes, I'm going to help rustle the kids. Let's see, we got a g5 pawn break from Black, looking to open up more avenues towards this king, right? Scary times for the king. Black wants to play king g7, get more access for that rook. Will it be rustling or wrestling? Maybe some of both. Maybe some wrestling. Maybe some hustling. White prepares maybe king g7, knight f5 check as a trick here to break up the bishop pair. Break up the structure a little bit. Black plays king g7 anyway, introducing rook h8 check, rook h1 mate. So not a lot of time for White to do much here. I guess knight f5, actually, Black would have just ignored it, right? Played a move like king f6. A very brave move. And on knight e7, then deliver the checkmate. So it had to be f3. Oof. That's unfortunate. White's under a lot of pressure. Black could play g4 to weaken the cover. Or just improve this bishop first. Oh, I think Black's like winning here somehow. By this point. Yeah. What other revolutions might be coming in the chess world overall? Well, I don't know how much of a revolution it would be, Thinker Teacher, but I think that at some point, there will be another chess company other than chess.com. I don't think that it's the end of chess history, so to speak, yet as far as chess business. I remember when I was a kid, we thought that ICC would be forever and ever and ever the only thing. You know, and now I imagine some people probably think the same thing about chess.com now, but I think there will still be, you know, innovations, perhaps because of this AI stuff that we talked about. Maybe some company other than chess.com will come up with a great AI product and not get bought by chess.com, or, you know, maybe Magnus will finally come up with some kind of a chess viewing app that he doesn't lose money on and doesn't sell to chess.com or something. I don't know. But I don't think that is 100% set yet. We've got the question of chess as an esport. I don't think that's really the future of chess, so I don't think that's going to be what changes the chess world dramatically. Black has an option to trade a single rook here, which I think would be fine for them, but they choose not to. The g4 move would be very desirable. I'm a little bit surprised Black hasn't yet found a time to play g4. Now White plays g4 themselves. Let's see. Black took a pawn. Okay. Might have been stronger to play g4. Now the rook's attacked, so there's no time for g4. Now here, right, you could trade the rook and then play g4, but then White does take on d6. So I can understand Black keeps playing. Maybe rook a1 connecting with the other rook would have made sense, so they could join up and give some checks. Bishop e5 is going to be very strong here, though, right? Bishop e5. Black goes for rook a8, though. You see this move? First of all, defending this. Oh, queen g5, king there and there. Okay, so rook b2 to stop rook a2 and rook a4, and Black does win it like this. So rook a8 may have been extremely strong here from Black. It just happened too fast for me to be confident about it. So very, very interesting game from Black using the pieces against the queen. And I think if we want to go back to, you know, when was White doing well, we have to go back all the way to here. And I don't mean that White's like doing well like they're better, but maybe it's about equal. And the trend started going against them by this point here, as they're looking for some kind of target for the queen. So I think it's interesting to go here and see if we can just briefly come up with some other approach to the position for White. Hey Oscar, yeah, we did see your game from about this point on, as Black gradually kind of took over the game here. But it feels like partly you initiated it with b4, b5, so there might be some other options for how to play this position. If you could trade the knight for the bishop, it would help a lot, right? b4, the pawn just got attacked again. But otherwise, Black's saying they're going to go do this, huh? Okay, what if we tried knight f3, having the rook look at this weakness and introducing the idea of e5? If here, then I would guess we have queen b6. There is rook b5 as well. Okay, so I have to go here, here, here. I'm trying to win back a pawn here. Chess.com's not letting me do arrows right now. There we go. Arrows are back. But not highlights. Okay, so we come here. Rook d7 here. I don't know if you thought you should be better or equal, but here it looks like maybe you could go back and forth with the rook. And honestly, to me, that seems fine. I don't see any reason to think White would be better here. I see no weaknesses in Black's position, and the bishop pair is pretty strong. So let's see if Black has something better. Rook b3 from Santo Sud. Going after the knight. Rook d6. Rook d6. Queen d6. Rook f3, e5. It was definitely risky for white. Great chances of losing. Despite the creative calculation. I was trying to get a draw off of queen b8 check, queen d6 check. Okay, we can also try e5 here. We trade a rook, but it is still that evil bishop pair. And black's got the second pawn. You would love a draw here? Okay. Good to know we're on the same page then, that we're willing to take equality. Still looks a little bit better for black with the second pawn. I'm not doing anything good enough to justify allowing rook a5. Yeah, Oscar, I don't know how to play this either. And, of course, as you said, you're low on time. So, yeah, I don't know the answer here for white. I mean, it seems you're a bit worse. You played b4, right? The rook moved. And then b5. If you play knight f3, there's still rook takes b4, right? Maybe something like this could save you. We have one pawn holding the queen side back still. But yeah, I don't really have any confidence in that either. Man, crazy. Crazy tough game. You think that's a lot more promising than b5 as you played? Knight f3, planning to play e5 against almost any move, right? Or queen b6. And rook b4 is the key variation, then e5, trade everything, queen c3 to c8. It was more or less forcing that line, Oscar Chess. The computer automatically opened up another game, sorry about that, but you know what I'm talking about. Rook takes b4 is the critical line there after knight f3. And queen c3, c8, there was some hope. There was maybe some hope. But yeah, my conclusion is that you were worse by the time I started watching the game. So, sorry about that. Folks, I'm going to have to run off and help the family. You know, getting to the beach doesn't happen on its own. You gotta find goggles and put on sunscreen and blah, 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 blah. So, I'm going to leave you all here with the tournament. My plan tomorrow is to cover a little bit of the Cairns Cup at about 10 o'clock my time, which is 1 p.m. Pacific or 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm hoping to catch the last 2 hours maybe, of the Cairns Cup live. If the Cairns Cup isn't live, we'll maybe do something else. All right, thank you, David. I will tell her that. So I'm going to push off and wish everybody a good day at this point. Send a little raid somewhere. Let's see what's going on here today. Today's a rest day at the Cairns Cup, so I can't send us there. People playing poker, people speaking Russian. Blunder-friendly chess. Puzzle stream. Chess puzzle stream. Let's do that. If I got the name right. Alrighty. Cheers, everybody. I'm gonna go to the beach.